lying in bed automatically creates a sense of emotional intimacy, I think. So you have something going for you with what the technique you've chosen.
Horizontal with Lila. Horizontal with Lila.
I'm Lila, and I am horizontal in Bali, Indonesia.
And I am Kaimata, and I am horizontal with Lila, also in Bali, Indonesia.
As opposed to being
digitally somewhere else
yes.
horizontal?
Exactly, which I don't do.
You don't? Oh.
No.
Okay, good to know.
No, I don't do that. Because I find that it's too much distance for what I'm trying to create.
Exactly. I agree with you on that one.
I really want to be right next to there is no substitute for presence like that. Being right next to someone. Hello, horizontal lovers. Horizontal is consensual eavesdropping on conversations about intimacy of all kinds, recorded while lying down, wearing robes. In this and the following episode, I lie down with Kaimata, Indonesia's rainbow-toting, openly LGBTQ+ singer-songwriter. She is a thoughtful rock star, an articulate activist, a love advocate, an outspoken woman with a bamboo guitar living a love life of liberation in a country that expects its women to be neither outspoken nor liberated. I love her and her meter-long hair. Kai wears maroon and black almost exclusively, right down to her motorbike helmet. She displays or wears a rainbow flag at every single show, at every single gig, and she will continue to do so until all of her people are free to love who they love. She battles internet trolls, social media harassment, hate messages, homophobia, discrimination, and erasure by her culture of origin on a daily basis. She's publicly out in a country that persecutes its LGBTQ+ citizens. She is out for all of her fellow Indonesians who cannot be yet, in the hopes of a new era in which they can all feel safe to be. By the way, she's 22 years old. I first encountered Kai through a Facebook post she made in the Ubud Conscious Community Group, raising awareness of the persecution of anybody with a queer identity in Indonesia, and the government's attempt to slip their discrimination into law. These are Kai's words, posted on February 21st, 2020. I need your help. Indonesia is trying to label all LGBTQ+ people as deviants dangerous to society, legally requiring us to go to conversion therapy. I am one of the only publicly LGBTQ+ Indonesian women. Why are there so few of us? Because my beautiful country has created a society and laws that ostracize and discriminate against my beautiful rainbow community. This flaming heart breaks with the new Family Resilience Bill draft in Indonesia. I am truly in tears. This new bill would define any LGBTQ+ member as a sexual deviant. It would require mandatory reporting to the government of anyone suspected to be LGBTQ+. Those who are reported would then be forced into conversion therapy to be treated. This draft is supported by 4 major political parties in Indonesia who claim gays interfere with the future of humanity. It pains me knowing they choose not to realize the humanity within those of us who might love someone of the same gender. And so I sit in Indonesia, my homeland, with the thought of fleeing ringing in my head, fearful for my livelihood, and scared as to how Indonesia can be developing so quickly with its economy and middle class, yet degenerating with basic human rights. What booms even louder than my fear, the recognition of the choice I have to stay, the advantage of an international support, and the privilege of a voice. These laws, regardless if passed, are meant to silence us, and it's worked at keeping 99% of the LGBTQ+ Indonesians in the closet, frightened by not just legal implications, but the social suicide of coming out and being viewed as the shame of the family. Had I been born in a different situation, I'd be in the closet too. And thus I am rooted in my country with a clear message. I am Indonesian, I am LGBTQ+, and I am proud of both. They can threaten me and tell me I deserve to die. They can put me in conversion therapy or put me in jail. Nothing will change the fact that I am Indonesian and I am flaming gay. If you're reading all the way down here, thank you for listening. I encourage you to please share this message to your friends, family, and anyone you know, especially those traveling to Indonesia. This isn't a solo project. We need a choir of voices singing this message. Update. Please help by sharing. Spread the message, for we need the world to recognize what's going on. Commenting. It shows support to all the Indonesians like myself who are feeling scared and isolated, and signing this petition. That's the conclusion of Kai's post from February 2020. This, quote, family resilience bill, unquote, would require families to turn in their non-heterosexual members for conversion therapy. Let me say that again. It would require you to turn in your trans sister, your gay brother, your lesbian aunt, your bisexual daughter, your pansexual cousin, to be tortured by the government in the name of families. In this, the first part of our conversation, we talk about the persecution of Chinese Indonesians, Kai's California childhood, falling in love for the first time and with a girl, coming out before she was ready, songwriting as emotional awareness, high school in Jakarta, a fateful spring break in Bali, public displays of affection in Indonesia, tourists and nudity, cultural sensitivity and admitting our privilege, modesty, menstruation, temples and tampons, the illegality of sex toys, and the fact that our current sexual partners don't define our sexual orientation, which is something I had a failure of a conversation with my mother about lately. Each horizontal recording is between 3 and 5 hours long and divided into 2 to 4 parts. My recording with Kai was around 3 hours long, so this episode 109, the first part of our recording, is available in all the podcast places. And next week's episode 110, the second part, will be available exclusively to patrons of the Horizontal Arts. Patronage makes it possible for me to share these intimate conversations with the world. Patreon is like the love child of crowdfunding and a subscription service. Navigate directly to www.patreon.com/horizontalwithlila. You cannot search for Horizontal on the Patreon site because all adult creators are hidden on their website, which lets us know just how far we still have to go, eh? So click the link or type patreon.com/horizontalwithlila into your browser and become a patron of the Horizontal Arts. Your patronage keeps Horizontal independent and uncensored, as well as unlocking access to all the part 2s, the secret patrons Facebook group, and intimacy tips videos like the inner mentor visualization I released last month. And here are some of my commitments during this American Revolution, the true American Revolution, during Pride Month and beyond. I commit to further amplifying the voices of people with marginalized identities, Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, people in the LGBTQ+ community, and more folks whose voices are squelched, censored, underrepresented, or unheard in the United States and across the planet. I commit to loving them fiercely and uplifting them in all the ways that I can. I commit to showing this love personally by caring for the beloveds I cherish. I commit to showing this love at large through anti-racist action that calls for justice in myriad ways, including, but not limited to, donating to anti-racist organizations, donating directly to folks in need, such as through the Black Fairy Godmother official's Instagram. Follow it. It's incredible what she's doing. Using horizontal to express anti-racist and pro-pride statements. Listening to and broadcasting the stories of Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, and LGBTQ plus folks in all mediums. Listening to, reading, watching, and financially supporting work created by and starring marginalized folks. Participating in education on anti-racism, led by BIPOC, BIPOC, Black Indigenous people of color, and LGBTQ plus folks, and continuing to unveil and excavate my own racism throughout my life. Now, my horizontal lover, come lie down with us in Ubud, Bali, Indonesia. So, I usually begin by asking, I don't have a lot of questions that I ask everybody, but there are a few, maybe like 3. And one is, what did you learn about sex growing up?
Good question. So, I was raised Catholic. Ooh. But my parents are quite liberal and very open-minded. So, thankfully, if anything was brought up, we spoke about it. But there was never an active, I guess, drive for them to bring up conversations. When I was in middle school, I was taught about chastity and how we are meant to save ourselves for our partners that we marry.
And you learned that in school here in Indonesia?
No, in the U.S.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
What part did you get this chastity education?
I was raised in Southern California.
Wow, really?
Yes, I was.
That is not what I expected you to say from that kind of education.
Religious school.
Wow, okay.
Which has different sets of laws that they can abide by in terms of what education means in regards of sex education.
Yeah.
So from that aspect, that was my middle school. And when I moved to Indonesia, I was fortunate to go to quite a liberal school with a lot of privilege in which we learned sex ed in terms of how to put a condom on and defining sex as between a man and a woman when a penis enters a vagina, which for me, I didn't realize at the time, but made such a heavy impact on the way I viewed my sexual relations with people and created quite a disconnect between what happens before and after, as well as who I choose my partners to be, because some of my partners don't have a penis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, born in the States?
I was born during a very politically unstable. Unstable.
I think, yeah.
A politically unstable climate in Indonesia. So my parents and I lived in the U.S. It was the 1998 riots in which our ethnic group was targeted, and tens of thousands of people were raped and murdered for the fault of what Indonesia scapegoated Chinese citizens as saying we were the cause of a financial crisis. So I lived in the U.S.
I know that intellectually that history repeats itself, but emotionally it's really hard for me to understand. It's like, why would we do these kind of things again when we know what happens when people are persecuted? It's just a terrible idea. Why?
Yeah.
What the hell and why? And stop doing that. So you were living in the States.
Yes.
Your parents were Catholic because of the Chinese ancestry or the Chinese
I have no
influence?
idea how we became Catholic.
Because most people here are Hindu, yeah?
In Bali, most people are Hindu. In the majority of Indonesia, we are predominantly a Muslim country, even though we are a secular country without a specific religion defining our nation. So there are 6 recognized religions in Indonesia: Catholic, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, and Confucianism. Those are the 6 recognized religions in Indonesia.
And unrecognized ones?
Judaism is not recognized in this country.
Wow. So what does that mean if you're Jewish in this country?
They don't think you exist. It's people with Israeli passports cannot come into Indonesia unless they are on a government-sponsored tour.
Wow.
But it's the same thing for Indonesians wanting to travel to Israel.
Indonesians don't exist in Israel.
Unless they are on a specific government-sponsored tour.
Wow. Okay. And your education, so came in the form of chastity education.
Yeah.
Then you had the kind of sex ed that many of us had in the United States, which is condom on the banana, periods, puberty, and P&V sex, basically.
Yes.
Makes babies.
And STIs. A lot of photos of STIs.
Yes. And, sex is dangerous and scary because you can get these terrible things called STIs. You said your parents didn't bring up anything, but did you come to them asking?
Sometimes we'd have talks about it, and it was always open-minded, and they always just said, be safe. Whatever you do, just be safe about it, which is something that I realize is so liberal in the eyes of most Indonesian parents of what they would say. So I'm grateful. In that aspect, I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Did they tell you how to be safe?
Never really specifically.
They're just like, be safe.
Just be safe about it.
A lot of people that I have talked to, their parents said, do whatever you want, just don't get pregnant.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. We have a long way to go in terms of inclusive, pleasure-oriented, positive sex education. A really long way to go.
I agree.
But you and I were both fortunate in that we weren't told that sex is bad, shameful, wrong, dirty. Do you remember early crushes on girls?
I actually don't. I think that my first crush really happened in high school. I think I was a late bloomer in that regard.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was chasing boys around on the playground.
Really?
Like in kindergarten or something. Yeah. So in high school.
Yes.
Can you tell me about her or that crush?
I fell in love with my best friend. And it was a very confusing time. I didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know what it was that I was feeling. All I knew it felt so intense. Like it was... Her well-being was something that was on my mind. And I guess I was so confused because it was my first time feeling like I loved someone and not having a baseline to gauge that on. From the beginning of time, I think I have been a lot more open about my sexuality and kind of had a firm belief that I will love whoever I love, regardless of their gender, and that wouldn't matter. But to then feel it become tangible with a person that I cared about, who was my best friend, who I spent so much time with, that brought on a different level of not only having to come to terms with this part of my sexual identity, but also realizing that it's not going to ever be reciprocated from that person. It was a double whammy.
Ooh. And it's such a high level of risk, right? To express that to a friend. Did you make a declaration or did you keep it private?
I was in love with her for a while, and one of our good friends knew just by knowing. I'd never said, but she told me she knew, and she said she accepted me and loved me, and it was very sweet. My biggest regret is that I never told my friend myself. It came out through another person's words. And to have my coming out happen when I don't think I actually was ready at that time or had the emotional resilience to deal with it in a way that would be fruitful and beneficial and respectful to both me and everyone else, is something that pains me.
Yeah. So you were outed.
A little bit, but I don't blame the person who did. I love her, and she was honestly trying to do the best thing for all of us. And I just wish I had felt empowered at that moment to be the one to say the words, "I love you." And it's okay that you might not love me.
In that way.
Yeah.
She probably loves
cared about
you.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you paint the scene of that story for us? How you recognized that you were in love, or that this was a different feeling than the care that you had for other friends, and then the circumstances that led to the mutual friend sharing information before you were ready?
Okay. So, throughout my life, I have used songwriting as a medium to express myself. I think a lot of us have a disconnect between the emotions we feel and how we portray ourselves in the world. And I am of that same boat. So I would learn a lot about how I felt when I would write songs. And that's when I felt like I could tackle and pinpoint the feelings, what they physically manifested themselves as, and how it affected my thought process. And it was also a way for me to share with others how I felt in a way that felt like that they could understand, and not just understand, but also experience. I feel songwriting is such a strong modality to cultivate compassion. And in that regard, I remember my best friend, who I was in love with, at a party, and this very attractive boy in our grade made moves on her, and they kissed, and they did more. And I remember that sinking feeling in my stomach of, I'm happy she's doing what she wants, but I'm feeling like there is something personally affecting me about it. And I had to explore that. I had to explore that with quite a great depth of, what does that mean about me? And why is it affecting me so much? And she continued to have flings with this boy, and that was okay. And I kept it to myself, and I was there for her during the times she needed to get the morning after pill and other things. But each time we did those activities, I was torn between feeling a little bit broken about the situation, but also, I don't know, maybe happy that she was happy.
Yeah, in polyamorous relationships, they call it compersion. Feeling joy for somebody else's joy when it's not derived from your direct relationship with them.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
And I can imagine how mixed that would be, right? Some of that, some of the, like, sinking, some of the pain, some of the rejection, right?
Definitely.
All mixed up.
Yeah. Everything came out when we were on vacation. It was a group of 9 of us in Bali partying because it was our senior year and it was our last quarter of the school year.
So you moved back when?
Oh, good question. I moved to Indonesia when I was 14. I went to high school in Jakarta, Indonesia, the capital of Indonesia. All of us were in school in Indonesia. And we flew to Bali and we were partying. And on the first day there were some random men that approached us. And I was talking to one of them and she was talking to another. And all of a sudden I turn around and she's gone and she's disappeared with this random stranger. This is the first day we're here on spring break and I kind of have a little bit of a panic attack.
Yeah.
I think it was a mixture of feeling worried that she ran off with someone who may have been, a risky partner.
Yeah.
And also being in a place that felt foreign at the time because we were on vacation. We were far from home. and feeling like I was now alone with a random guy and she had left with some other dude.
Right. It's like she could be endangered. You've been abandoned.
Yeah.
It sounds like you maybe didn't want to be with this guy either. So now you're in a situation that you don't want to be in and you don't have backup.
Yeah. So I panic. I'm asking everyone, all of our friends, where she is. Everyone says they don't know. She's not picking up her phone. It's going straight to voicemail. And my mind immediately goes that she was kidnapped.
Yeah.
You know? But she comes back after around 30 minutes, and it was just that she was getting water with this guy. And I'm still crying, and I'm still recovering. And she's like, why are you reacting so strongly? And I couldn't say anything. I was hyperventilating and debating whether or not I should say something or not. And that's when it came out from our other friend.
Had the guys cleared out at that time?
Yes.
So it was you and your best friend, but the other friend was around?
Yes.
Were there other people?
No, not at this time.
So it was the three of you?
Yeah.
And where were you?
I was crying in the bathroom.
So like at a club or something?
We had gone home at this point. She was still trying to figure out, everyone was trying to figure out what was happening. And that's when it came out.
So your mutual friend said,
perhaps, do you think she's reacting this way because she feels more than just friendship for you?
How did that affect you? You're already in this like panicked state. What happened to you?
I mean, it felt so treacherous. It felt like a new world that I was entering. And it felt so vulnerable. I felt exposed.
Yeah. It's almost like she dropped a stick of dynamite or something in your wake. Like,
yeah.
The fire's consuming the wick. And
yeah, and I look back at that time and I'm immediately transported into that feeling of, I guess, feeling so small and so bare.
What was her reaction in that moment?
In that moment, she said everything was okay. She gave me a hug and that it was okay and that she cared about me. Things changed when we woke up the next morning. Yeah. And I think that's when reality set in. She stepped away and created space between us.
So you were still at school with her?
Yeah, we were still at school together. We had a few more months to spend in each other's vicinity, but it was months where we spent kind of avoiding each other. I felt so drained and felt like I had made the biggest mistake of my life. It wasn't very conducive to, I guess, me feeling like I was in my element of control about my own identity. I think that on a personal level, that has been what sparked me to be so vocal and passionate now.
What do you think your mutual friend was trying to do? Like, what do you think she hoped the outcome of sharing that information would be?
I think it was to hopefully explain to my best friend why I felt this way. I know her intentions were all great, and I contributed to her wanting to tell my first love that information. So I think she just wanted to make everything clear.
Did you have to go through an internal process to be able to see it in that light and be able to forgive her?
I've never harbored ill feelings for her about this situation. I have had to go through quite a lot of work with my relationship with the woman I loved. the first woman I loved, in recognizing that she had to cope with a big bomb being dropped on her too. And from her perspective, she felt that I was hiding a big part of myself from her. And that a lot of the things we did as friends were things that she probably wouldn't have done with me if she knew I loved her.
Because they felt too intimate with that knowledge?
Perhaps, like, I don't know, changing in front of each other, things like that.
Mm.
But then again, we were 17. At that time and space, I guess a lot of us are only focused on ourselves, it's the time to focus on ourselves. So it's hard to see from someone else's eyes, I think.
Well, we're just becoming, right? Just becoming humans, really. Still.
Yeah.
Your family, what was the landscape of your household as you were growing up in Southern California?
It was a typical American life. My parents immigrated. We assimilated. My parents had 2 children, 2 cars, kids in after-school activities. My mother was a preschool teacher, and my father was a businessman selling flooring. So the landscape of how we operated seemed so American, and for a long time I viewed myself as an American. I had no ties to Indonesian culture and didn't identify as an Indonesian person.
You were a baby when they brought you there?
Yeah.
My mom is Brazilian,
Okay.
and she immigrated to the States to marry my father. She loves to tell this story. She says that when I was 3, I knew 300 words in English and 300 words in Portuguese. But at that time, I'd been spending a lot of my life in Brazil. And then I don't know what happened. I mean, a few years later, my mom did get ill and she was in the hospital. So obviously she wasn't traveling then. But I think they brought me back to the States at one point when I was very, very young. And then I refused to speak Portuguese anymore.
Wow.
So I don't have any memory of this, but I can imagine that my late aunt thought that I was resentful that they brought me back to the States, that I wanted to be in Brazil. And so then I refused to speak Portuguese after that. And so I didn't feel really any Brazilianness. My mom wanted me to go and to really learn the language, to immerse myself. She kept pushing. She wanted me to go for a year during high school. But I was in an arts program that I really loved and I wanted to finish, and I wouldn't have completed it if I had gone for a year abroad during high school. And then she wanted me to go right after high school before college, and I wanted to just go straight back to New York. My parents had divorced when I was 12 and I was in Florida with my mom.
Okay.
And I wanted to go back home to New York. I did that. And when I went was actually after I graduated from college, the summer after I graduated. And then spending time immersed, living with my aunt, playing capoeira, and taking classes, taking language classes, but being mostly around people who did not speak English, so that we could not revert to what was easy in order to communicate. Because if you can just revert to English, people usually will.
Yes.
And so I was fortunate in that my aunt didn't speak much English, and the capoeira group, they had almost none, just from movies,
Yeah.
So I wanted so much to connect with them socially that I really had to learn. And that's when I started to feel, I am American Brazilian. Like I have that, but I didn't feel it for so long.
But now you do?
It is in me. Yes, it is in there. But now I'm pretty much fluent.
Wow.
So
That's impressive.
thank you. I'm like, is that true? Is that true? I mean, like, yes, enough.
It is.
Not in writing, but in speaking.
Most people probably aren't fluent in Portuguese in writing, right? I'm assuming.
That's possible. I'm not sure.
Most Indonesians aren't fluent in Indonesian when writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are living an American life, and what did you witness in your parents' relationship? What did that teach you about relationshiping in general?
Good question. There's a way in which my parents communicate with each other that seems very rooted in, I guess, a common cause. They do argue and bicker every now and then, and it's really funny to see from an outsider's perspective, especially now, because I can see that they're fighting about nothing, which is, I guess, how most fights between partners are. But
I don't know. I think it's usually about something, but not the thing they're fighting about.
No, yeah. It's blown out of proportion, and then they've lost sight of everything else. Their relationship was one where there was a time in which my father moved back to Indonesia before we did. He moved to Indonesia 2 years prior to us. So for 2 years, my mother lived as kind of a single mom. Yet they still maintain contact and everything. And I think that is pretty clear about their standards of what their relationship is. It's to be there for the children. The reason why we stayed in the US was because my parents wanted to make sure I could finish middle school in the US. Because I really didn't want to move back to Indonesia at that time. So they, I guess, sacrificed their own personal relationship with each other to allow me that opportunity.
Or put it on hold, kind of deferred it?
Yeah.
Wow. That reminds me of, and I was trying to remember the name of the book, but it is a conflict resolution book written by, I think he was a hostage negotiator. The thing that I didn't read the whole book. The thing that I really remember was, in the midst of having a conflict or an argument, one of the first things to do is establish a mutual purpose.
Definitely.
Like what we both really want is X. What we really want is to feel joy together again. And let's allow that to be the foundation upon which we have this conversation.
Definitely.
Keeping that in mind. It's beautiful that they were able to do that, and that you saw that in them. Did you see them being affectionate?
Well, yes, actually, which is very rare for most Asian cultures. They would hold hands and kiss, which is lovely. And both of my parents are very affectionate towards my brother and me, hugging and, saying I love you.
It's so good. I read in the Lonely Planet Guide before I came here that physical affection in public is frowned upon here in general.
Yes. Very much.
So no hand holding.
Interestingly enough, between two women that are friends, that's okay.
And men?
Less so. But anything of opposite gender couplings, no. That's very frowned upon.
Parents and children?
Less so. No, I don't think most Indonesians are raised hugging their family and hearing I love you from their family.
That's so interesting. I have a notion that people, as in people in a culture who feel warm, like Brazilians, have a tendency to be really physically affectionate amongst their families. And here, the people that I have met who were raised here feel warm, yet not affectionate. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a very tough thing to discuss. When we were speaking about Bali, I have to preface this by saying that Indonesia is 17,000 islands, plus or minus a few hundred, depending on the tide.
Wow.
There are so many different cultures, so many different languages. There are hundreds of languages spoken. And then let alone all the dialects that we have. Yet somehow we fall under one nation. So it's very hard for me to even try to
generalize.
think about a blanket statement that could cover all of this. From my experience in Asian culture as a whole is that very rarely is affection considered appropriate. There's also maybe a culture of tough love.
Yeah.
That goes on. And also the idea of humility. That we are supposed to leave affection for the bedroom, which connotes all affection as something sexual, when it's not. But that might be where a lot of the cultural differences, and I guess where we see a disparity in Indonesian culture is that there is a sense of warmness because everyone is considered family in Indonesia. When you are saying sir or madam, we call them father or mother. When you address other people around your age group, I call them like older brother or younger sister. That is just commonly, it's ingrained into our language, the way we speak, the semantics we use, which really influence a culture in that regard. So I think that's where the warmness comes, rather than physical affection. Yes.
Do you think what makes physical affection inappropriate here is that is considered sexual, and anything sexual is to be behind closed doors?
I think so. Yeah.
Do you think that it's rude when foreigners come and they're physically affectionate with their partners in public here?
It depends. There's definitely like a gradient. If you're kissing in front of a temple for a really great Instagram photo, maybe not the best thing to do, personally. I don't think physical affection is something that is offensive or should be offensive. Like hand-holding or hugging. I am an Indonesian and I am publicly affectionate with my friends and my partner in Indonesia.
Do you get flack for it?
No. Every time I have like kissed a woman in public in Indonesia, we are always asked if we're sisters or if we're cousins, or just or like they don't comprehend that it is a romantic attraction or a romantic relationship.
Even when you're kissing on the lips?
Yes. And they're like, oh, and then I'm like, this is my girlfriend. And they'll be like, oh, really close friends. Okay, got it. So it's this huge sense of denial.
Wow.
Yes, that has happened so often here.
And that's the euphemism, right? Used in gay culture for a long, long, long time. You know, this is Uncle Bob, and this is Uncle Bob's friend.
Yes.
Luke.
Yes.
You know? Oh, wow. So you'll tell them directly and they will divert it.
When I feel safe to do so, yeah, exactly. And I think it's just a strong cognitive dissonance that happens where this isn't something that they recognize, so they have to make sense of it in whatever form they can, which is a friendship.
Or a family member.
Yes.
But I'm assuming that they're not doing a lot of making out with family members.
Exactly. And like my partner is not of the same ethnic origin as I am, so would be a lot less likely they would be related to me.
There's not a lot of interracial marriages and such?
There are actually quite a few interracial marriages in Indonesia. Typically what we expect is Indonesian woman marries white older man.
Right.
That is the stereotype.
Do you know anything about the Kuta Cowboys?
Not personally.
I'd love to make an episode with one of them. But,
okay.
But I thought that was interesting, which I also read in the Lonely Planet Guide about these young male escorts who work the beaches in Kuta and are paid in dinners and accommodations and gifts and are hired for their company. It's said mainly by Japanese and Australian tourists. And I thought that was really fascinating and really powerful because of how it subverts that narrative of the young Asian woman with an older white man.
Yeah.
To have a young Asian man with older women. And just subverting the gender narrative also. You know, we always think, and there's so many depictions in our media of men using escorts, of men hiring sex workers, to the point that there's a show called Slutever.
Oh, on Vice.
Yes, with Carly Shortino. And in one of the episodes, she goes looking for a happy ending massage for her, and she can't find one. She can't find anybody to give her a happy ending massage. Now, how many places could you walk into if you had a penis and get a happy ending massage in New York alone?
Wow.
A ton, right? Yeah. She cannot find one person. I think she eventually finds one, but to give her a happy ending massage. So I think that is just a fascinating switch. I'm sure it has its own, which is why I want to talk to somebody, its own complications, its own issues, its own power issues and culture issues. But I do love the subversion. I do, you know?
Yeah.
I do love that shift and the allowing of women to seek out pleasure and company and comfort and to pay for it.
Yeah.
You know? That was a tangent. Little Kuta cowboy tangent.
Thank you for your tangent.
Oh, yes, yes. Somebody asked me on social media about the feeling here. She set it up with the premise of many, particularly white women, coming to a place like Bali to feel free, to feel sexually free, to feel free in their body, to be nude. And she said she's seen a lot of pictures of nude or semi-nude women on, you know, public beaches or in public spaces, tourists. And she wondered how that was perceived here, what kind of impact that had on the culture, how people felt about it, and whether it was rude and disrespectful to be... I think she felt it was flaunting the physical body in a place that is quite modest and quite religious. Do you have any thoughts about that? About going nude on the beach? I asked a man who drove me, who's a guide here, about it. And he said, yeah, sometimes European women, they go nude on the beach. Like, that's what they do at home. So like, whatever. And I said, well, what if a Balinese woman did that? He said, oh, no.
Yeah.
Basically never, he said. But I kept pressing to see whether he thought it was rude. And he was hesitant to share whether he thought it was rude or disrespectful.
Oh, that's a tough one. Okay, so many layers to this.
Yeah.
From my own personal perspective, I don't think there has to be anything sexual about a nude body.
Yes, preach.
Right?
Preach.
Then again, I do feel there's a time and place to uncover. When people describe their ability to be free here, they also have to recognize that there's a financial advantage they have and a racial advantage they have.
Yes.
So in their freedom, I hope they recognize that there are a lot of people that don't have that privilege. So when people say, oh, Bali is such a free place, you can do whatever you want, you can be whoever you want, that may be the case for that person who is a foreigner who can also choose to leave whenever they want. But for the majority of Indonesians, that's not the truth.
How can we as foreigners be in action recognizing that privilege? What would that look like for us to be doing that?
I think there's some sense of cultural sensitivity of firstly becoming aware. It's learning about the reasons behind the way things work, regardless of if they are antiquated or not. People hold beliefs as to why they justify their thoughts, whether it's religion or morality or facts, anything. I think as a foreigner, it's our responsibility to understand the place we are in and then how it affects the people that are here, and also admit to the privileges we have. A lot of us don't want to admit that we are privileged, to admit that there are things that we may have potentially been born with or grew up with that give us a leg up in society.
Yes, but admitting it is one thing, and then choosing different actions or enacting in some way that... Did you see that meme recently about equality and equity?
Is this the one with the wall?
Yeah, the what are they called? They're called like apple boxes in film. The stands, so that you've got a tall person, a medium person, and a shorter person, and equality gives them all the same stand to stand upon, so the same amount of distance from the ground. And so then it's the same thing. And then equity gives them different heights and gives them more support if they are shorter so that they can see over the wall. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about, you know, the privilege in being here and being able to... It was in response, and I thought it was a beautiful response, and I've been thinking a lot about it, to a photo that I posted where I'm nude, my knees are covering my chest. It was a self-portrait on that settee, I guess, that we were on before, outside in front of the pool. This is a private space, right? This is my current home. And so I swim nude in the pool all the time, and I walk around here nude, as it is my pleasure to do so. I walk around nude in my home all the time. That's really important to me, to be able to do that. There's no way for anybody else to see me. So I feel that it is okay to do so. And however, you know, it's not like I'm blameless in any of the regards that she brought up, in terms of, you know, let's say I wore a bikini top as my shirt and went to a yoga class the other day, right? So I'm bearing more of my skin than I see any Balinese woman doing here. And I wondered, like, is this affecting somebody in a negative way? Did notice a few boys looking at me and giggling. So I was like, well, maybe there's this is yeah, I don't know about this.
It's hard. It's such an individual circumstance, I think. Like, if I am going to a Balinese ceremony, I am going to dress in the traditional outfit, the kabaya, because I am wanting to assimilate myself into that culture.
And when you go to a ceremony, as a woman, you cover your shoulders and your knees. What is you said it's important to know the reason behind that. What is it? Modesty. It's so difficult for me, right? I really wrestle with it. If I go to a temple, I will cover. I will do as the people do, because I want to be kind and respectful. And also, the cultures that enforce modesty by covering up their women, I feel so challenged by the notion that a woman's body is inherently immodest.
It's difficult. It is.
It feels so wrong to me. And I understand that this is a history and a culture, but it's also a history and a culture of oppressing women, telling them that their bodies are flagrant and an elixir to men, that men cannot control themselves, so women have to cover up. And you know?
Yeah, I feel you on that.
So I really wrestle internally. It doesn't mean I'm going to show up at a temple with my knees out.
Yeah.
Just, the equation of sexuality with nudity, I think, causes a lot of ills in this world. And on top of that, I don't think that sexuality is anything to be ashamed of or to be judged or to be, you know, or to be considered dirty anyway. So even if nudity was sexual all the time, which it is categorically not, I still would not think that was bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a problem or that was bad. Can you explain to me about the menstruating being considered unclean? Like, you can't enter a temple when you're menstruating?
Yes, that's true. That is common in most religions, actually.
Really?
Yes, inclusive of Islam, Hindu, Buddhist.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it because I read about the temples here for Hindu, but I did not know about Buddhist especially. But why? What is unclean about this natural process?
So in temples here, like there are signs not only for if you're menstruating, but also if you have like a cut or a wound, you're not supposed to be going into the temples because that's also unclean. I think it's I don't know how to speak on this behalf. I would assume as a general thing, it's the idea that your body is expelling something. So that is considered, it's not the right time to go to a holy place, a reverent place.
Curious about considering blood to be unclean when it's inside all of us.
Yeah.
You know?
Indonesia's funny with menstruation. You know, most Indonesian women aren't allowed to use tampons. That's why it's so hard to find tampons anywhere.
Aren't allowed.
No, it's socially unacceptable to use tampons.
Because it's not okay to stick anything inside your vagina?
Yes.
Brain explode.
Exactly.
So it's napkins?
Yes,
like
sanitary pads.
Would thinks be acceptable? The period panties?
Yes, that seems very, very environmentally friendly for Indonesia at the current state. But yeah, I would assume so. Just nothing inside, nothing internal.
Can you get a dildo in this country?
Not legally.
Whoa. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Sex toys are illegal here.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, it's contraband.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Yeah.
So confiscated, punished?
Less so about punished unless you're distributing. There is a market, of course, because there's a demand for sexual pleasure.
Yes.
It's just underground, black market, highlighted in a different way, not called what it actually is.
Called a massager by any chance?
Sometimes there are sex stores around Southeast Asia that are legal, and a friend of mine owns one in Singapore and says he has to ship them into here in ways that mask its shape and its purpose. So a lot of toys are made out of silicone.
Mm-hmm.
So he packages it in silicone Tupperware and baking sheets. So like baking mats and everything as a way to disguise it when it's shipped here.
Wow. I'm just envisioning that it's a great image. Related to that, I wish that more sex toys were not penis shaped. Just as a thing, you know, why do they all need to be that shape? They don't. Wow, okay, sex toys are illegal. Putting things inside a vagina is taboo.
Yes.
Sex is between a man and his wife.
Yes.
These are the understandings of this society. And it happens inside a bedroom with the doors closed.
Mm-hmm. Typically meant to procreate.
When did you start exploring sexually?
Around the time I became an adult, around 18.
I have switched my language, but I have to remember it still from losing my virginity to
Yes.
making my sexual debut.
Ooh.
which I really like. I think that's just a lovely way to think of it.
Yes.
And so if I think of it that way, I made my sexual debut a bit earlier. I was probably 16.
Okay.
I was auditioning for colleges because I auditioned for theater school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was auditioning for a group of colleges that had converged in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I auditioned for NYU, but in Chicago. And I was also auditioning for DePaul. And at the DePaul audition, one of the students was helping out this young man that was very charming and very funny. And I went to his dorm room, and we had these like couple days together while I was there auditioning. And he was actually devoutly, and I assume still is, devoutly Christian.
Wow.
But because people will interpret things in the way that makes sense to them and in the way that suits them, he did not consider, as a lot of Catholics do, I understand, he did not consider oral sex to be sex or losing his virginity.
Yeah.
Or to count in that way. And he was very skilled at giving oral sex. And I had my first orgasm that wasn't self-generated or generated by like the faucet or, you know. And I was like, wow, oh my God, this is, I gotta tell everybody, this is like the best thing in the world. You know? Like, there could not be anything better than this.
Wow.
So my sexual debut, when I started to shift that language, because I started to include that as that really felt like my first experience, instead of what I had called losing my virginity, which happened when I was 19, with a man who really just did not love me and did not care that much about me, and who was heartbroken over a woman. He was a white man who habitually dated Asian women and eventually married an Asian woman. And he was heartbroken by a woman, and he was on a dating at like an early, not an app because it wasn't app time yet, an early dating site called nerve.com.
Interesting.
Which was actually amazing.
Okay.
At that time. So this would have been 2002 or so. Yeah, 2001, 2002. And at that time, it was kind of brave people, early adopters, interesting people, creative people. Nobody, like, not nobody. It was not common to be doing this. So you had to be a little bit interesting to take that leap.
Definitely.
And so I met him on that. He was, as I said, quite heartbroken. He was writing a novel about that experience. He had been one of those early startup guys who'd formed a company in college, made a bunch of money, and now he was living in this apartment in Soho. And I was living in a 3-person dorm room in NYU, a low-cost triple, you know, and he was living in this loft in Soho. And emblematic of our relationship is the time that I showed up for a date with a carton of strawberries, thinking like, oh, we couldn't feed them to each other.
Aww.
And he was like, oh, thanks. And he took them and he put them in his protein shake that he was making. And he was like, no.
Wow.
Yes. So that is the man that what I used to call lost my virginity to. That's the man I had P&V sex with for the first time. I was very, very nervous that it would hurt because it was difficult to insert tampons. I was so tight. A gynecologist even said, yeah, you are tighter than the average person with a vagina. And I was nervous, and I knew that being nervous, I would be more tight, but I couldn't stop myself from being nervous. So I said, do you have anything that can help with this? He's like, well, I've got some codeine.
Oh.
And I took codeine.
Oh, how was that?
I don't think I felt anything.
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember feeling anything at all. I was like, and then afterwards, because I don't remember much of the actual sexual experience. We did have sex after that, but I don't remember much of that experience. do remember laying there in bed afterwards and looking out the window, which was facing another building. It wasn't very spacious looking out there in the world, right? It felt kind of caged. And thinking, that's it. That's sex. Like, that's sex? That's sex? That's what the poems are about and the movies are about and the songs are about? That's sex? Damn, maybe I just don't like sex that much. Oh, no. You know? Like that. So that's the experience that I had. But when I reframed to think of my sexual debut as my experience with that young man at DePaul, I thought, oh, well, I actually had a lovely entry into my sexuality with somebody else. It was a beautiful experience. We're still in touch now.
Perfect. Is he still devoutly Christian?
I think so.
Okay.
I didn't ask him the last time I saw him, but yeah, I think so. He's actually... He's an adorable human being.
Aww.
And I'm so glad that he shepherded me. I wish that more people had that experience of having essentially like a sexual Sherpa or a guide. You know, how beautiful would it be? I can't even see to a society that would have this, but how beautiful would it be to have initiation rites around sexuality, where you chose somebody who chose to essentially mentor you and brought you in to this experience and taught you about your body and pleasure. Like wow, you know, how incredible. I feel like we'd have a totally different world.
Definitely.
If people didn't have so much indoctrination of shame around it and were instead invited in to experience their pleasure in their own bodies. And I can imagine a cultural shift towards understanding that sexuality can feel spiritual, can feel like a connection with that is greater than the connection between you and your partner, that feels like a connection with nature and feels like a connection with the energy that exists in all things. I don't know how that shift will happen. I know people speaking out about it and teaching others, but I don't know. There's still so much repression. But I do have a dream that could be. I just feel like we wouldn't have any war. I just feel like we'd have a really peaceful society, a world society, culture, if we had pleasure positive world. What did your first experiences teach you about sexuality?
My first sexual experiences typically, I think, were my way of being self-destructive.
Ooh.
It was my way of harboring my shame and anger about my sexuality and the fact that I fell in love with a woman who I didn't end up keeping in contact with in a way that was to, I guess, hurt myself. I wasn't respectful of me and what I wanted, and I think I sought out, I guess, maybe an answer or a justification that I was all right through doing things that I didn't actually feel were right for me and the people that I chose at the time.
Who did you choose?
Men. Also just people that I didn't know, didn't feel a connection with. And I think it was a form of self-harm in that regards. Yeah. And when I look back at that and I look at my 18-year-old self and that, I don't like defining that as my sexual debut. That was where I was using the guise of sex to destroy myself.
When you were having these experiences, did you feel in your body, or were you dissociated from your body? Did you sort of send your body to have sex?
Yeah. Yeah, it felt like I wasn't there. My mind was somewhere else. And it also made me wonder why I wasn't enjoying it.
And it sounds like for instance, my mind has been somewhere else during sex, but it was usually in a fantasy with somebody else when it was somewhere else. And it sounds like that's not what you're talking about.
No, for me it was, I guess, my mind questioning why I was doing this. Because I knew as it was happening that I wasn't taking care of myself. I look back at my younger self with such, I guess, I just want to wrap her in a blanket. Not to say I haven't had pleasurable sexual experiences with men. I definitely have had a few men that I really cherish. But when I had my first experience with a woman who I was in love with, didn't know I was in love with until we ended up in the same bed as each other.
Really?
Yeah, that was just mind-blowing. That was a rush. That felt like an awakening. Like, I wanted to just stay so connected physically and emotionally, and it was the only thing on my mind. And that was the first woman I kissed, and that was a woman I was living with for 3 years.
Tell me the story. Tell me the story.
We were traveling together. I was 18, dropped out of college after a good 10 weeks. And we were traveling together, and I was making music, and she was teaching yoga. It just was a progressive growth of becoming more physically affectionate with each other, and us just being like, oh, it's the way hippies are, you know? All hippies hold hands, and all hippies hug, and all hippies cuddle, you know? And it grew from that to, oh my gosh, I somehow am on top of you, and our lips are locked, and I haven't thought about anything and have just fully immersed myself in this experience. I don't know how much time has passed, whether it's been 1 second or 1 year, but all I know is I am fully in contentment at what's going on now.
How did you have the bravery after that experience with your first love? You know, not revealing it and then having it revealed and then having the dissolution of that friendship. How did you have the bravery to proceed with this next love?
I think that's where the gradual steps subconsciously made me feel a lot safer. And it also seemed like, when I look back at it, I could definitely see that romantic reciprocation was happening, even though neither of us recognized it. Prior to this girl had also predominantly been with men and never had a girlfriend. So it was just, I guess, so innocent in the way I felt about it, and I think she did as well.
So she was coming to a realization as you were getting closer and more affectionate.
I'm not sure. From when we've reflected back on it, we both say it was like an out-of-body experience where we merged and didn't expect to, yet felt completely like it was destined to happen, maybe, or I'm not sure. It was a unique relationship.
That's a very different way of being out of your body than the one that you just described.
Exactly.
In what way? I don't know that I have ever experienced that.
It felt like I was participating in something bigger than myself. It felt like I wasn't in control of my thoughts because I didn't have any thoughts. It feels like what I think all yogis describe as enlightenment in that regard. I am someone that loves time. I keep track of time very regularly. People look at my notebook and are shocked that I write down the exact time I'm writing things and am always on time.
I was impressed with that too.
Thank you. So I lost track of time and I was okay with it. And that was when I realized that this is something incredibly profound that I had never experienced before.
Did you have your eyes open?
No, I don't think so.
How did you know what to do?
I didn't. I didn't. I really didn't. And nor did she. And it was precious in that regard. It felt like exploration. And so comforting to explore with someone that I loved.
You'd never seen any images of women making love
I have.
before then?
Yes.
So you had?
Yes.
So you had some mental idea
Yeah.
of how it could go.
Yeah.
Okay. I always wonder when people have had no imagery. Like, how do you know? How do you know? And I guess if you're really exploring with somebody, you just move towards what feels good, and you're like, "Oh, that felt good. Do that again."
Yeah.
You know, like, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Just as when many of us were younger and we discovered masturbation just by either brushing against something or, you know, having the massage jet, you know, go across you in the pool, and you're like, "Well, that felt good.
Yeah.
I'll do that again. Then maybe I'll feel more good. I was feeling more good.
Yeah.
Could it feel more good?"
Yeah. So from my perspective, I felt like my hands were anthropomorphized. They had their own mind, and they were wandering and exploring on their own. And it was just, I guess, such a luxurious experience feeling someone's reaction to touch.
So you then entered into a relationship with a woman. And at that time, did you use identity markers like lesbian or bisexual?
Never. I've never actually really stuck with one identity marker. I say that I am LGBTQ+. And on a personal level, when I look for a partner, I look for anyone in the LGBTQ+ community as someone that would be my potential partner.
Does queer feel good?
Queer, yeah. I am fine with anyone addressing me as gay, bisexual, lesbian, queer, trans, whatever. I really don't care. I resonate with all of them, partly, but no one of them fully, is how I describe it.
Does pansexual have any charge for you?
That works, sure.
Yeah, so I understand. So it's like you are open to this umbrella. You feel that the rainbow umbrella is you more than any particular shade of it.
Oh yeah, all I know is I'm really not straight. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
I recorded with two women who run in New York. The founder runs these in New York, in Miami, in Sydney, in Hong Kong, maybe, as well. All female play parties called Skirt Club. And I remember she posted on, there's a bisexual visibility day, and she posted on that day this chart, and it was like, I wish I could remember it more clearly, but it was like, sometimes has sex with women and sometimes kisses. It was like, all of these are bisexual. It was like, and I have never claimed that label for myself, but I have enjoyed kissing some women in my life. I've had some sexual experiences with women that were pretty delightful, so
Yeah.
I wonder if I don't use it because it's easier to pass. And I think about that. And I'm still in dialogue with myself about it. I think there is a sense, there's this like queer enough thing. And also the sense that I don't want to co-opt something that doesn't belong to me, right? A concern about claiming, so if as I am predominantly physically, sexually, romantically attracted to men, I don't want to claim something. Like I want to support, I don't want to, I want to show up for it and fight for it. But I want to make sure that I'm not, I don't know, it's like stealing some thunder or something from people whose identity it's really important to claim that.
I can see where you're coming from. You want to approach it sensitively, with a sensitivity, and also recognize that from an aspect you might have it easier because you're predominantly with men.
Yes.
But also there's an aspect of it's okay to explore sexually, and it's okay to say that you like kissing girls.
Yeah.
And have had great sexual experiences with girls, and that be also normalized too.
Sure.
Because there's an aspect of, especially with bisexuality, where they are shunned by straight people by saying that they're just gay and just still partway in the closet. But then also from the LGBTQ plus community, from the gay and lesbian side of, oh, you're actually not gay.
You're not, yeah.
And it's that aspect of, I think a lot of us want to make blanket statements about everything.
Yeah.
I fall at fault at that all the time. And it's really hard to do so because personally, I feel like I am more romantically attracted to women than men.
Mm-hmm.
I find it easier to emotionally connect with men than women. With men than women.
You find it easier to emotionally connect with men than women?
Yes.
But you're more romantically attracted to women?
Yes.
Whew.
Yeah. But then those are also blanket statements that I'm making just based on my history.
Prior experience,
yeah.
Right.
Your sexuality is just as valid with whatever identity you want to put on it. And I think that is incredible that we are having these conversations now and being able to breach that topic of how we identify and how we define ourselves and what we enjoy.
I want to make sure that I'm not disowning something that is true for me.
Mm-hmm.
I also would like to make sure that I'm being respectful of people who have had to fight hard to be accepted and to be proud and to walk in parades, and to be out.
Mm-hmm.
With an understanding of my privilege, being that I've been predominantly with men and can pass in the world as a straight woman. So yeah, I think the word is grok.
Is this Yiddish? What is it?
I don't think so. No, it's just I'm grappling with this.
Oh yes, okay.
I'm
Yeah, there's definitely like a push and pull you're experiencing. From my perspective, I am always told that I don't look gay. Which is always fun. I'm like, how can I prove it?
Oh my gosh.
So I do have that quote-unquote straight passing privilege. I am a feminine woman with ridiculously long hair.
Yes.
And the reason why I typically only date people in the LGBTQ plus community is I had an experience where I was dating a lovely man. Super sweet. I really like him. And I really liked him. But he said something. He said, "You're straight now because you're with me." And that was the interesting thing to hear of. Now I have to wash away all this part of my identity of who I can be sexually attracted to, or romantically attracted to, or emotionally connected to. It's an important thing to mention that the partners we have currently don't define our sexual orientation.
Yes. It's still so astonishing to me, even though we see it over and over, that people who have been marginalized and put in boxes want to keep themselves and other people in boxes. Like, why would you do that when you know how much pain it causes?
Exactly.
You know the singer Ani DiFranco?
Yes.
She was predominantly, I think, for a long time in queer relationships. And then she married a man. And she had a child. And the queer community that was vocal was largely really angry with her.
Yeah.
But this is her choice and her sexuality. And she moved towards what called out to her soul in a person, and happened to be in a man.
And I think it's the fear that something like that promotes the idea that we could be changed. If someone does fully identify as lesbian or gay, that it is a choice. And there's like, I guess, this big campaign of born this way. my thought is, whether it's a choice or not, I'm gonna love her. It doesn't matter, like, defining how this happened or why we are queer or gay or anything isn't the right questions to be asking. It should just be acceptance. But I also can understand why people would be upset or potentially fear that it would, I guess, further push the agenda that gay people can change.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's too bad, right? Because that's one visible person who happens to be a celebrity and their own fluidity, their own journey. Because for many of us, obviously not all of us, right? The Kinsey scale is a spectrum. We are more fluid and we slide actually along that scale, many of us, throughout our lives, if we allow it. A lot of people don't allow it, can't see because of the horse blinders that they have of identity on that there is fluidity. But that's not true for everybody, of course, right? And I understand, right, that for many people, the identity is very fixed and very hard won. And this notion of fluidity can really shake what they've worked for, right?
Exactly.
What they've fought for so hard.
Come and hear the words they say. Are you bi or are you gay? Oh, how I thought you were straight. What a pity, such a shame. You both look so feminine. Don't you miss it with a man? With two girls, how does that work? 'Cause I can always be your third. Well, I'll answer all your questions, though I know it won't fit in your fantasy. Despite the ego telling you our bedroom does not want your company. So go and lust and fantasize, but nothing more. Despite your tries, I don't need a dictator to tell me what I need. This isn't just a phase, doesn't even work that way. You think you can turn me straight? Well, maybe I can turn you gay. Oh, did I just cross a line? 'Cause you've been overstepping mine. It seems your masculinity suffers insecurity. So go and lust and fantasize, but nothing more. Despite your tries, I don't need a dictator to tell me what I need. It's so hard seeing two girls in love, so hard, as if it's not enough, so hard. It's only okay 'cause it makes you hard. 'Cause it's so hard seeing two girls in love, so hard, as if it's not enough, so hard. It's only okay 'cause it makes you hard. So go and lust and fantasize, but nothing more. Despite your tries, I don't need a dictator. I don't need a dictator.
This episode was mixed and mastered by Irving Gadori from igrecording.com. My cover art is by Shauna Shea. Find her on 99 Designs. This remix of my original intro music was created by the beatbox musician Kid Mental. I first came across Kid Mental when he remixed Ear Hustle's theme song, which is my favorite podcast, if you didn't know. He is a self-contained orchestra. He is a Black creator whom you can support right now. Get a theme song of your very own by commissioning him on Fiverr, or become his patron on patreon.com/kidmental. If you have an LGBTQ plus friend living in an intolerant place, or among people who provide little support for their true identity, would you share this episode with them? They are not alone. People like Kai are fighting for their right to love who they love. In next week's episode, the second part of my conversation with Kai Mata, we discuss Kai's ideal relationship, the Bali cacao ceremony, age discrepancies and the sexiness of power, the dream marriage tour, Indonesia's proposed family resilience bill, which would define all LGBTQ plus people as sexual deviants and require their family members to turn them in for conversion therapy, how existing laws are currently used to target Indonesian queers, Kai's intolerance escape plan, turning her adversity into an advantage, and a story about the self-proclaimed greatest dancer in the world. To listen to next week's episode, become a patron of the Horizontal Arts by navigating directly to patreon.com/horizontalwithlila. And to find out about all things horizontal, including my upcoming workshops, my How to Connect course, and intimacy advice sessions, sign up for my email missives on horizontalwithlila.com. Until next time, may you have someones to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. I'm looking forward to leading a workshop on 20 emotional release techniques at the Virtual Intimacy Retreat, Take 2, July 10th through the 12th. Thank you for being an intimacy warrior. Thank you for getting horizontal. Could you potentially laugh maniacally for me?
How's that?